The woman with the scarred hands walked into the saloon at high noon, and every conversation died like a candle flame snuffed between wet fingers. Victoria Ashford had learned to read the silence that followed her wherever she went. It spoke louder than any whispered curse or shouted accusation ever could. The men at the card tables froze mid-shuffle. The piano player's fingers stuttered on the keys before stopping altogether. Even the bartender, a grizzled man named Samuel who had seen just about everything in his 40 years in Nevada City, California, took an involuntary step backward when she approached the bar. "Water, please," Victoria said, her voice steady despite the way her heart hammered against her ribs. She kept her hands visible on the scarred wood of the bar, palms down, letting everyone see the strange markings that covered her skin from fingertips to wrists. The marks looked like burned scars at first glance, but anyone who looked closer would see they were something else entirely. Patterns that seemed to shift in the light, symbols that no one in town could identify, swirling across her flesh like frozen smoke. Samuel hesitated, his eyes darting from her hands to her face and back again. "I'll get you that water, Miss Ashford, but you'll have to understand if I ask you not to touch the glass. I'll set it down and you can pick it up yourself." Victoria's jaw tightened, but she nodded. This was better than some towns, where they would not even serve her at all, where they had driven her out with stones and curses, calling her witch demon, touched by darkness. The marks had appeared 3 months ago, the morning after the fever broke. The same fever that had killed her mother, her father, and her younger brother Thomas in the span of a week. Victoria had been the only one to survive, and when she woke, her hands bore these marks and something inside her had changed. She could feel things now. Sickness, pain, the slow creep of death through a body. When she touched someone, she could see it all laid bare before her like a map drawn in blood and bone. And if she concentrated, if she reached deep into that strange new well of power inside her chest, she could heal. She had discovered this ability by accident when she had grabbed the arm of Mrs. Henderson, who had been coughing blood into her handkerchief for weeks. The moment their skin connected, Victoria felt the consumption in the woman's lungs like ice in her own chest. Without thinking, without understanding what she was doing, she had pushed against it, and the ice had melted away. Mrs. Henderson had screamed, not in pain but in terror, because when Victoria healed her, the marks on Victoria's hands had glowed with a soft golden light, and Mrs. Henderson swore she could feel something flowing out of the girl and into her own body. Something unnatural, something wrong. Word spread fast in a town like Nevada City. Within a day, everyone knew about Victoria Ashford and her strange gift. Within a week, no one would come within 10 feet of her. The preacher had given a sermon about false prophets and the devil's temptations. The town doctor, a rational man who put his faith in science and medicine, had examined her hands and declared that he had no explanation for the marks, which only made people more afraid. Victoria drank her water slowly, aware of every eye on her. She had come to town to buy supplies, a few days' worth of food and some fabric to patch the holes in her dresses. She was living in her family's old cabin, 5 miles outside of town, scraping by on what little money her father had saved before the fever took him. She knew she could not stay in Nevada City much longer. Eventually, the fear would turn to anger, and anger would turn to action. She had seen it before in the last town, where they had burned down the boarding house where she was staying, forcing her to flee into the night with nothing but the clothes on her back. She was just setting down her empty glass when the door to the saloon burst open, and 3 men stumbled inside, half carrying a 4th between them. The injured man's shirt was soaked through with blood, and even from across the room, Victoria could see that his face had gone the grayish-white color of someone who had lost too much. "We need the doctor," one of the men shouted. "Jake got hurt bad out at the ranch." Horse threw him into a fence post and it tore him open something fierce. Samuel leaned over the bar. "Doc Henderson is out at the Miller place delivering a baby. Won't be back until tonight at the earliest." "Tonight?" The man's voice cracked with panic. "He won't make it until tonight." "Look at him." Victoria was moving before she made the conscious decision to do so. Her feet carried her across the saloon floor, her hands already itching with that strange awareness that told her exactly how badly the man was hurt. She could feel the tear in his side, the blood pooling inside his abdomen, the way his heartbeat was growing weaker with each passing second. "I can help him," she said. The three men looked at her, and recognition flashed across their faces. The one holding the injured man's shoulders shook his head violently. "Get away from us. We don't want anything to do with you." "He's dying," Victoria said flatly. "I can feel it from here. The fence post punctured something inside him. He'll bleed to death within the hour if someone doesn't help him." "We'll wait for the real doctor," another man said, but his voice lacked conviction. They could all see how much blood there was, how shallow their friend's breathing had become. "Please," Victoria said, and she hated how desperate she sounded. "Let me help him. I know you're afraid of me, but I promise I only want to heal him. I won't hurt him." "You're a witch," the first man spat. "Everyone knows it. Those marks on your hands, the way you can see inside people like some kind of demon. We'd rather Jake die clean than be touched by whatever darkness you carry." The words struck her like a physical blow, but Victoria forced herself to stay calm. "Is that what Jake would want? Ask him. Ask him if he wants to die rather than let me try to save him." The injured man, Jake, made a wet gurgling sound. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with pain. "Cold," he whispered. "So cold." Victoria watched as the three men looked at each other, then at their dying friend, then back at her. She could see the conflict playing out on their faces, fear warring with desperation. In the end, fear won. "No," the first man said firmly. "We won't let you touch him. We'll keep him comfortable until Doc Henderson gets back." "He won't survive that long," Victoria said, but she already knew it was useless. She had seen this same scene play out a dozen times in the past 3 months. People would rather die, would rather watch their loved ones die, than accept help from someone they thought was touched by darkness. She turned away, her hands trembling with frustration and grief. How many people had she watched die because they were too afraid to let her help? How many more would she have to watch before she gave up entirely? She was halfway to the door when it opened again, and a man walked in who made every instinct in Victoria's body go on high alert. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the kind of lean muscle that came from years of hard work. His clothes were dusty from the trail, his dark hair touched with gray at the temples, despite the fact that he could not have been more than 35 years old. But it was his eyes that caught Victoria's attention. They were a startling shade of blue-green, the color of deep water, and they held a weariness that she recognized all too well. This was a man who had seen too much, survived too much, and was carrying the weight of it all on his shoulders. He took in the scene with a single sweeping glance. The bleeding man, his panicked friends, Victoria standing in the middle of the floor with her marked hands visible for all to see. "What happened?" His voice was deep and rough, like gravel tumbling in a river. "None of your business, stranger," one of Jake's friends said. "This is a local matter." The tall man's eyes lingered on Victoria's hands for a long moment. She waited for the fear or disgust to appear in his expression, but instead she saw only curiosity and something else she could not quite identify. "That man is dying," he said, nodding toward Jake. "Seems like it's everybody's business." "We're waiting for the doctor," the man insisted. "Now if you would kindly mind your own affairs and let us tend to our friend in peace." The stranger looked at Jake, whose breathing had become even more labored in just the past few minutes. Then he looked back at Victoria. "You're the healer, aren't you? The one people are talking about." Victoria's throat went dry. "I can heal, yes. Why aren't you helping him?" "Because they won't let me." The bitterness in her voice was impossible to hide. "They would rather watch him die than let me touch him." The stranger walked over to Jake and his friends. He looked down at the injured man for a long moment, then up at the three men holding him. "You're going to let him die because you're afraid. It's not your place to judge us," one of them said defensively. "You don't know what she is. Those marks on her hands, the things people say she can do. It's not natural. It's not Christian." "Seems to me that healing the sick is about as Christian as it gets," the stranger said mildly, "but I'm not here to debate theology with you. I'm just pointing out that you're making a choice to let your friend die, and you're going to have to live with that choice for the rest of your lives." The three men looked at each other again, but their resolve did not waver. Fear had sunk its claws in too deep. The stranger sighed and turned back to Victoria. He walked toward her with slow, measured steps, and she found herself unable to look away from his eyes. There was something in them that called to her, a recognition that went bone deep. When he was standing directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell the dust and leather and sage on his clothes, he began to roll up his right sleeve. "What are you doing?" Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I got hurt a few weeks back," he said, continuing to push the fabric up his forearm. "Bullet grazed me during a disagreement with some cattle thieves. Thought it was healing fine, but the past few days it's been aching something fierce. Feels hot to the touch, and I can see red streaks starting to spread up my arm." He finished rolling up his sleeve, and Victoria's breath caught in her throat. The wound was infected badly. She could see it even without using her gift, the way the flesh around the half-healed bullet graze was swollen and angry-looking, the telltale red lines of blood poisoning crawling up toward his elbow. "Heal me," he said simply. Victoria stared at him. "You don't understand what you're asking." "People think I'm cursed. They think I'm dangerous." "People think a lot of things," he said. "Most of them are wrong. What I know is that I've got poison in my blood, and if it reaches my heart, I'll die. And you're standing here telling me you can heal, so I'm asking you to heal me." "I don't even know your name," Victoria said, though she could not have explained why that mattered. "Nathan Vance," he said, "and I'm guessing you're Victoria Ashford." "How did you know? Small town. People talk." "I heard about the woman with the marked hands who can see sickness and heal it with a touch. Figured that had to be you." Victoria's hands were shaking now. It had been so long since anyone had asked for her help, so long since anyone had looked at her with anything other than fear or hatred. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" Nathan's expression softened slightly. "I've seen a lot of things in my life, Miss Ashford. Fought in the war, spent years riding with the Rangers chasing outlaws across 3 territories, watched good men die for no reason and bad men live to old age. After all that, I figure I'm a pretty poor judge of what's natural and what isn't. What I do know is that the ability to heal can't be evil. Whatever gave you those marks and that gift, I don't believe it was the devil." Tears stung Victoria's eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. She would not cry in front of all these people who had shown her nothing but cruelty. "It's going to hurt," she warned him. "When I heal you, you'll feel it. Like fire running through your veins, burning away the infection. Everyone I've healed says it's painful." "I can handle pain," Nathan said. His eyes never left hers. "I'm giving you my permission, Miss Ashford. Whatever happens, I'm asking for this, so if it helps, you have nothing to feel guilty about." Victoria took a shaky breath and reached for his arm. The moment her fingers made contact with his skin, the world exploded into sensation. She could feel everything. The infection burning through his blood, the way his body was fighting a losing battle against the poison, the old scars that covered his body from a lifetime of violence and hardship. She could feel the bullet wounds, the knife cuts, the broken bones that had healed crooked. She could feel the exhaustion that went deeper than physical tiredness, the soul-deep weariness of a man who had seen too much darkness. But underneath all of that, she could feel something else. Something pure and clean and strong. His will to survive. His determination to keep going no matter what the world threw at him. The core of goodness that he had managed to hold onto despite everything he had endured. Victoria closed her eyes and reached for that well of power inside herself. It responded instantly, flooding through her body and into Nathan's. She felt him stiffen, heard his sharp intake of breath as the healing began. The marks on her hands began to glow, soft golden light spilling between their joined skin. The infection fought her. It clung to Nathan's blood like a living thing, refusing to be dislodged. Victoria pushed harder, pouring more of herself into the healing. She could feel the poison burning away, the red streaks fading, the swollen flesh returning to normal. The bullet graze knitted itself together, leaving only a thin white scar in its wake. When it was done, Victoria pulled her hand back and staggered. The room spun around her, and she would have fallen if Nathan had not caught her elbow with his newly healed arm. "Easy," he said. "Take a moment." Victoria looked up at him. His face had more color now, the gray tinge of sickness gone. His eyes were clear and bright, focused on her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "How do you feel?" she asked. Nathan rolled his shoulder, testing the arm. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his stern features into something warmer. "I feel better than I have in weeks. The pain is gone. The fever is gone. You did it, Miss Ashford. You healed me." The saloon was completely silent. Every person in the room was staring at them, at Nathan's healed arm, at the fading glow from Victoria's marks. "That's impossible," one of Jake's friends whispered. "We all saw the infection. It was bad. You can't heal something like that in seconds." "But she did," Nathan said calmly. He looked at the three men, then down at Jake, whose breathing had become even more labored. "Your friend is dying. You've seen what Miss Ashford can do. Are you really going to let him die out of stubbornness and fear?" The men looked at each other. Victoria could see the cracks forming in their resolve. They had just witnessed something impossible, something miraculous. "How could they deny it, please?" Victoria said softly. "Let me help him. I don't want anything in return. I just don't want to watch another person die when I know I could save them." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man holding Jake's shoulders nodded slowly. All right. But if you hurt him, if you do anything that looks wrong, we're pulling you off him. Understood?" Victoria nodded quickly and moved to Jake's side. She knelt down beside him, her marked hands hovering over his blood-soaked shirt. "I need to touch the wound directly," she said. "I'll need to lift his shirt." The men helped her, and Victoria placed her hands on Jake's torn side. Immediately, she was flooded with the full extent of his injuries. It was worse than she had thought. The fence post had not just torn his flesh, it had punctured his intestine. Poison was leaking into his abdominal cavity, and his body was going into shock from blood loss and infection. This would take everything she had. Victoria closed her eyes and let the power flow. She heard Jake cry out, heard his friends shout in alarm, but she did not stop. She could not stop. She felt the torn intestine knit itself back together, felt the damaged blood vessels seal. She found every drop of infection and burned it away, cleaned out the poison that had spread through his abdomen. She rebuilt torn muscle and severed nerves, replaced blood that had been lost, shocked his heart back into a stronger rhythm. By the time she was finished, Victoria was shaking so hard she could barely remain upright. Her vision had gone gray at the edges, and there was a ringing in her ears that would not stop. She felt hands catch her as she tipped sideways, and through the haze, she heard voices shouting in amazement. The bleeding stopped. It just stopped. His color is coming back. Jake, Jake, can you hear me? Victoria forced her eyes open and saw Jake sitting up, looking confused but very much alive. His friends were clustered around him, laughing and crying and thanking God. No one was thanking her, she noticed, but that was all right. She had not done it for gratitude. She had done it because it was right, because she could not stand to watch another person die when she had the power to prevent it. The hands supporting her belonged to Nathan Vance. He had lowered her to the floor and was now kneeling beside her, his expression concerned. "Miss Ashford, Victoria, can you hear me?" "I'm all right," she managed to say, though her voice sounded distant and strange to her own ears. "Just tired. Healing takes a lot out of me." "When was the last time you ate?" Victoria had to think about it. "Yesterday morning, I think." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You just performed a miracle on an empty stomach after healing me first. No wonder you can barely stand." He looked up at Samuel, who was still standing behind the bar looking shell-shocked. "Bring us some food, whatever you have ready, and coffee if you have it." "I don't have any money," Victoria said quickly. "I can't pay for food." "I'll pay for it," Nathan said firmly. "You just saved 2 men's lives. The least I can do is buy you a meal." Samuel hesitated, looking between Nathan and Victoria. Finally, he nodded and disappeared into the back room. Victoria looked over at Jake and his friends. They were still celebrating, still marveling over the healed wound. None of them had so much as glanced in her direction since the healing was complete. "They're afraid to even look at me," she said quietly. Nathan followed her gaze and frowned. "Give them time. What you did, what you can do, it challenges everything they thought they knew about the world. People don't handle that kind of thing well at first. They've had 3 months to get used to it in this town," Victoria said bitterly. "It doesn't get better, it only gets worse." Nathan was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Tell me how this happened. How did you get these marks? How did you get this gift?" So Victoria told him. She told him about the fever that had swept through her family, about waking up as the only survivor with strange marks on her hands, and a new awareness thrumming through her veins. She told him about the first accidental healing, about the fear and rejection that had followed. She told him about the towns she had been driven out of, the names people called her, the way even the preacher said she was touched by darkness. Nathan listened to all of it without interrupting, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "My mother had the sight," he said finally. "She could see things that were going to happen, sometimes days before they occurred. My father said it ran in her family, that her grandmother had it too, and her great-grandmother before that. When I was a boy, people used to come to her for guidance. But there were others who were afraid, who called her a witch and worse. We had to leave 3 different towns before I turned 10 because people couldn't accept that she was just a woman with an unusual gift." Victoria stared at him. "What happened to her?" "She died when I was 16. Consumption. She saw it coming, of course. Told me and my father months before it happened that her time was short." Nathan's voice was steady, but Victoria could hear the old grief underneath. "My father died a few years after that. Broken heart, the doctor said, though I've always thought it was more that he didn't see any point in living without her." I'm sorry, Victoria said softly. My point, Nathan said, is that I grew up knowing that there are things in this world that can't be explained by science or logic. Things that people fear because they don't understand. But fear doesn't make something evil. Your gift, Victoria, it's a blessing. Anyone who can't see that is a fool. Samuel returned with 2 plates of food and 2 cups of coffee. He set them down on a nearby table without a word and hurried back behind his bar. Nathan helped Victoria to her feet and guided her to a chair. She sank into it gratefully, her legs still shaky. The food was simple fare, beans and cornbread and some dried beef, but Victoria ate like she had been starving. Perhaps she had been, in a way. It had been so long since she had a proper meal, since she had sat at a table with another person and felt something close to normal. Nathan ate more slowly, watching her over the rim of his coffee cup. "Where are you staying?" he asked. "My family's old cabin, about 5 miles north of town." "Are you planning to stay in Nevada City?" Victoria shook her head. "I can't. I've stayed here longer than I should have already, but I needed time to save up some money before I moved on. But after today, after this, they'll want me gone even more than before. I'll probably leave within the week." "Where will you go?" "I don't know. Somewhere no one has heard of me yet. Somewhere I can maybe find work and stay quiet and not let anyone know what I can do." She looked down at her marked hands, at the patterns that had brought her nothing but misery. "Sometimes I wish I had died with my family. It would have been easier than this." "Don't say that," Nathan said sharply. "You have a gift, Victoria, a real, genuine gift that can help people. Jake is alive right now because of you. I'm alive because of you. That has to count for something." "It doesn't count for anything if no one will let me use it," Victoria said. "I'm tired, Nathan. I'm so tired of being afraid all the time, of watching people die because they would rather succumb to their injuries than let me touch them. I'm tired of being alone." Her voice broke on the last word, and to her horror, tears started sliding down her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away quickly, but they kept coming. 3 months of suppressed grief and fear and loneliness finally breaking through the dam she had built around her emotions. Nathan moved his chair closer and did something that shocked her. He reached out and took one of her marked hands in his, holding it gently between his calloused palms. "You're not alone," he said quietly. "Not anymore." Victoria looked up at him through her tears. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I know you saved my life. I know you're brave and kind and stronger than anyone I've ever met. And I know that you deserve better than to spend the rest of your life running and hiding from people who are too ignorant to see the truth." "What truth?" Victoria whispered. Nathan's eyes held hers, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. "That you're remarkable, that your gift is a blessing, not a curse, that anyone would be lucky to have you in their life." Victoria could not speak. No one had said anything like that to her in so long. No one had looked at her the way Nathan was looking at her now, like she was something precious instead of something to be feared. "Come with me," Nathan said suddenly. "What? Come with me. I'm heading up to Montana Territory. I have a ranch up there, about 100 acres near the Missouri River. It's good land, plenty of water, far enough from any major town that people mostly mind their own business. You could build a life there. A real life, not just running from place to place hoping people don't find out about your gift. You're asking me to go to Montana with you. We just met a few hours ago." "I know it's fast," Nathan admitted, "but I learned a long time ago that when something feels right, you don't question it. You just act. And this feels right, Victoria. You need somewhere safe to go, and I have land and a home to offer. You don't have to decide right now. But think about it." Victoria wanted to say yes immediately. The thought of going somewhere new, somewhere far from the whispers and the fear, with someone who actually understood what she could do and was not afraid of it, was so tempting it almost hurt. But doubt crept in, whispering warnings in the back of her mind. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "You don't know me. Why would you invite a stranger to come live on your ranch?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "Because I see something in you that reminds me of myself. That weariness, that feeling of being set apart from everyone else. I've spent most of my adult life alone, Victoria. After my parents died, after the war, after years with the Rangers, I learned to keep people at arm's length. It's easier that way. Less chance of losing someone you care about, but it's also lonely as hell. And when I saw you standing in this saloon, watching that man die because people were too afraid to let you help, I saw that same loneliness in your eyes. I don't want either of us to be alone anymore." His honesty stunned her. Victoria looked down at their joined hands, at the way his rough, scarred fingers wrapped around hers so carefully, as if she were something fragile and valuable. "I don't know anything about ranch work," she said finally. A smile tugged at the corner of Nathan's mouth. "I can teach you. It's not complicated, just hard work. But I think you know something about hard work. I don't have much money. I can't contribute financially. I don't need your money. The ranch is doing well enough. What I need is someone to help build something with me. Someone to make that big empty house feel less empty." Victoria's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Nathan could hear it. This was madness. Going to Montana with a man she had just met, trusting him with her safety and her future. Everything logical in her brain was screaming at her to say no, to be cautious, to protect herself. But there was another voice, quieter but more insistent, that was saying something different. It was saying that Nathan Vance was different from anyone else she had ever met. That he looked at her marked hands and saw beauty instead of corruption. That he had trusted her enough to let her heal him when no one else would. That maybe, just maybe, this was her chance at something better. "I need time to think about it," she said finally. Nathan nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'm staying at the boarding house on Main Street for the next few days while I pick up some supplies for the journey north. When you've made your decision, you can find me there." They finished their meal in companionable silence. Victoria was acutely aware of the other people in the saloon, of the way they kept glancing over at her and Nathan with a mixture of awe and fear. Jake and his friends had left at some point, probably while she was crying, without so much as a thank you. It stung, but she was used to it by now. When they were done eating, Nathan walked Victoria out of the saloon. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The main street of Nevada City was busy with people going about their daily business, but Victoria noticed how they gave her a wide berth when they saw her approaching. Some crossed to the other side of the street entirely. "You have a horse?" Nathan asked. "No, I walk when I come to town." 5 miles is a long walk, especially after what you did today. You must be exhausted." "I'm used to it," Victoria said, though in truth, she was so tired she could barely stand. Nathan looked at her for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "Wait here." He disappeared around the corner, and Victoria leaned against the wall of the general store, grateful for the support. Her whole body ached with the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came after a particularly difficult healing. She had pushed herself hard today, healing 2 people in quick succession, and she was paying the price for it now. Nathan returned a few minutes later leading a beautiful bay mare. "This is Rosie," he said, patting the horse's neck affectionately. "She's gentle and she's patient. She'll get you home safely." "I can't take your horse," Victoria protested. "You're not taking her. You're borrowing her. I'll come by tomorrow to pick her up, and you can tell me then if you've made a decision about Montana." Victoria wanted to argue, but she was too tired, and the thought of walking 5 miles was genuinely daunting. "All right," she said. "Thank you." Nathan helped her into the saddle, his hand steady on her waist. The touch sent a flutter through Victoria's stomach that had nothing to do with healing or power, and everything to do with the fact that Nathan Vance was a devastatingly attractive man who was being impossibly kind to her. "Be careful on the ride home," Nathan said, looking up at her. "And Victoria." "I meant what I said. You're remarkable. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise." Victoria could not find words to respond, so she just nodded and turned Rosie toward the north road. As she rode out of town, she could feel Nathan's eyes on her back, steady and warm as sunlight. The cabin was exactly as she had left it that morning. Small and somewhat run down, with a leaking roof and windows that did not quite close properly, but it was shelter and it was hers. Victoria put Rosie in the small lean-to that served as a stable and made sure the horse had water and the last of the hay she had been saving for emergencies. Then she dragged herself inside and collapsed onto her narrow bed without even bothering to light a lamp. She was asleep within seconds, her dreams full of blue-green eyes and rough, gentle hands. Victoria woke the next morning to the sound of someone knocking on her door. For a moment, she was disoriented, her mind still foggy with sleep and exhaustion. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back, and she sat up quickly. Nathan. It had to be Nathan, come to retrieve his horse. She scrambled out of bed and tried to make herself presentable, smoothing down her hair and straightening her dress. When she opened the door, Nathan was standing on the porch with his hat in his hands and a concerned expression on his face. "I'm sorry to come by so early," he said, "but I wanted to make sure you got home all right last night. You were pretty worn out." "I'm fine," Victoria said, though she was not entirely sure that was true. Her body still ached from the healings, and there was a hollowness in her chest that she recognized as the cost of using her gift. "Come in. I'll make some coffee." Nathan stepped inside and looked around the small cabin. Victoria tried to see it through his eyes. The sparse furniture, the patched curtains, the general air of poverty and neglect. She felt a flush of embarrassment creep up her neck. "It's not much," she said defensively, "but it's home." "It's better than some places I've slept," Nathan said diplomatically. He watched as she built up the fire and set water to boil. "Victoria, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. All right. Are you afraid of me?" The question caught her off guard. "No." "Why would I be afraid of you?" "Because I'm a stranger who has invited you to travel hundreds of miles to an isolated ranch. Because you don't know me or what my intentions are. Because I could be lying about everything I've told you." He met her eyes steadily. "I want you to know that you have no reason to trust me, and I wouldn't blame you if you turned down my offer. But I also want you to know that everything I told you yesterday was true. I do have a ranch in Montana. I am traveling there, and I would be honored if you chose to come with me." Victoria poured the coffee with shaking hands and passed him a cup. "I'm not afraid of you," she said quietly. "I should be, I know that. But when I healed you yesterday, when I touched you, I could feel something about you, something fundamental. And I didn't feel any darkness or cruelty or deception, just weariness and loneliness and a core of goodness that you fought hard to hold on to." Nathan looked startled. "You could feel all that?" "I can feel everything when I heal someone. Every scar, every old injury, every emotion that's left an imprint on their body. It's part of the gift, though sometimes it feels more like a curse. I know things about people that they've never told anyone." She took a sip of her coffee, using the cup to warm her still cold hands. "That's another reason people are afraid of me. They don't like the idea that I can see inside them, that I can know their secrets just by touching them. That must be difficult, Nathan said, to carry all of that knowledge about people. It is, but it's also how I know I can trust you. Because I've seen inside you, Nathan Vance, and I know that you're exactly who you say you are. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the wind whistling through the gaps in the walls. I want to come with you to Montana, Victoria said suddenly. The words came out in a rush before she could second-guess herself. I don't have anything keeping me here, and the thought of going somewhere new, somewhere far away from all the people who know about me and fear me, it's more appealing than I can say. But I need you to understand something. What's that? I'm not looking for charity. If I come to Montana, I want to contribute. I want to work and earn my keep. I don't want to be a burden or someone you feel obligated to take care of. Nathan set down his coffee cup and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Victoria, I'm not offering this out of charity or obligation. I'm offering it because I see potential for something more. I won't lie to you. I find you fascinating. Your strength, your kindness, the way you refuse to let the cruelty of others break you. But I also want to be clear about what I'm offering and what I'm not. Victoria's mouth went dry. What do you mean? I mean that I'm not asking you to marry me or promising you romance. I'm asking you to come to Montana as my partner, someone to help build the ranch, to make a life together. If more develops between us over time, then we'll figure it out as we go. But I don't want you to feel pressured or trapped. You'll have your own space in the house, your own autonomy. If at any point you want to leave, I'll help you get wherever you want to go. Does that make sense? It made perfect sense, and Victoria felt a rush of relief. She had been worried that Nathan expected something from her that she was not ready to give, but this offer was reasonable and respectful. That makes sense, she said, and I appreciate your honesty. I accept your offer, Nathan. I'll go to Montana with you. The smile that spread across Nathan's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. Good. That's good. I'm glad, Victoria. I think this is going to be the start of something important. They spent the rest of the morning making plans. Nathan told her he needed 3 more days in Nevada City to finish gathering supplies and to sell some items he had brought down from Montana. Victoria would use that time to pack up what little she owned and to settle her family's affairs in town. They would leave at dawn on the 4th day. True to his word, Nathan came by every day to check on Victoria and to help her prepare for the journey. He brought her food from the boarding house, refusing to let her protest that she could manage on her own. He helped her patch the worst of the holes in her traveling clothes and bought her a sturdy pair of boots that would hold up better on the trail than her worn-out shoes. On the 2nd day, he brought her a rifle. I know how to shoot, Victoria said, examining the weapon. My father taught me when I was young, but I don't like violence. Neither do I, Nathan said. But the trail to Montana is long and there are dangers. Wild animals, hostile tribes, outlaws looking for easy targets. I need to know you can protect yourself if something happens to me. The thought of something happening to Nathan made Victoria's chest tighten with anxiety, which was ridiculous considering she had only known him for 3 days. But the idea of losing him, of being alone again, was almost unbearable. Nothing is going to happen to you, she said firmly. Nathan's expression softened. I'll do my best to make sure of it, but life doesn't always go according to plan, Victoria. You know that better than most. She could not argue with that, so she accepted the rifle and let Nathan teach her how to clean and load it properly. On the 3rd day, Victoria went into town one last time to close out her family's account at the bank and to say goodbye to the few people who had shown her any kindness. It was a short list. The baker's wife, who had always given her a sympathetic smile, even if she would not let Victoria touch her. The livery owner, who had never said a word to her, but had also never run her off when she came to look at the horses. The little girl who lived 2 houses down from the bank, who used to wave at Victoria before her mother started pulling her away whenever Victoria walked past. As Victoria was leaving the bank, she ran into Jake, the man she had healed in the saloon. He was with his wife, a petite woman with worry lines etched deep around her eyes. Jake saw Victoria and stopped dead in his tracks. For a moment, Victoria thought he was going to cross the street to avoid her. But then his wife elbowed him sharply in the ribs and whispered something fierce in his ear. Jake's face reddened, and he walked over to Victoria with his hat in his hands. "Miss Ashford," he said, his voice gruff. "I wanted to thank you for what you did, for saving my life." Victoria was so shocked she almost could not speak. "You're welcome," she managed finally. "I know I didn't say anything that day. I know my friends and we weren't kind to you. But I've been thinking about it a lot since then, and I realized that you saved me even though we had treated you poorly. Even though we said terrible things about you, you still helped me." "I couldn't let you die," Victoria said simply. "Not when I had the power to save you." Jake's wife stepped forward and took Victoria's marked hand in both of hers. Victoria tensed, waiting for the usual fear or disgust, but the woman just held her hand gently and looked her in the eyes. "Thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for giving me my husband back. Thank you for healing him when no one else could. You're not evil, Miss Ashford, no matter what anyone says. You're an angel." Victoria felt her own tears rising and blinked them back. "I'm just a woman who was given an unusual gift, but thank you for saying that. You have no idea how much it means to hear." They talked for a few more minutes, and Jake's wife pressed a small package into Victoria's hands before they left. When Victoria opened it later, she found a beautiful embroidered handkerchief and a note that said simply, "For the woman who saved my Jake, with eternal gratitude." It was such a small thing, but Victoria treasured it more than gold. That evening, Nathan came to the cabin for the last time before their journey. He helped Victoria load her few possessions into the wagon he had rented for the trip, and they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the California hills. "Are you nervous?" Nathan asked. "Terrified," Victoria admitted. "I've never traveled that far before. I've never left California." "Montana is beautiful," Nathan said. "The sky is bigger there somehow. The stars at night are so bright you feel like you could reach up and touch them. The air is clean and cold, and the land stretches out for miles without a fence or a building to break the view. I think you'll like it." "Tell me about your ranch," Victoria said. "What's it like?" Nathan's face lit up with enthusiasm, and Victoria realized this was the most animated she had ever seen him. "It's about 100 acres on the Missouri River, like I said. The house is solid, built it myself from local timber. 2 stories, with a big stone fireplace and windows that face east so you can watch the sunrise. There's a barn for the horses and cattle, a chicken coop, a root cellar for storing food through the winter. The land itself is a mix of grassland for grazing and forest for hunting. There's a creek that runs through the property, feeds into the river. The water is so clear you can see straight to the bottom." "It sounds wonderful," Victoria said wistfully. "It is, or it will be once it's properly built up. Right now, it's just me and the land and a lot of hard work that needs doing. But I have plans. I want to expand the herd, build a better irrigation system, maybe plant some crops if I can get the soil prepared properly. It's going to take years to build it into the kind of ranch I envision, but I'm patient. I've got nothing but time. And you want me to help you build it?" Nathan turned to look at her, and in the fading light, his eyes seemed to glow. I don't just want you to help me build it, Victoria. I want us to build it together. I want it to be our ranch, not just mine. A place where we can both belong. The word belong hit Victoria like a physical blow. She had not belonged anywhere since her family died. She had been adrift, unwanted, feared. The idea that she could have a place where she truly belonged, where she was valued and needed, was almost too good to believe. I won't let you down, she said quietly. I promise. I know you won't, Nathan said. He reached over and took her hand, the marked one, and held it gently. We're going to build something good, Victoria. Something that lasts. They sat like that for a long time, hand in hand, watching the stars come out one by one in the darkening sky. The journey to Montana Territory began just before dawn the next morning. Nathan had loaded the wagon with supplies. Food for the journey, tools, seed for planting, fabric and thread, ammunition, medical supplies, and a dozen other necessities. Victoria's possessions fit in a single trunk, a testament to how little she had managed to hold onto through all her wanderings. They traveled north through California, following well-established trails that would eventually connect them to the Oregon Trail. Nathan set a steady but not punishing pace, mindful of Victoria's lack of experience with long-distance travel. They would ride for 6 or 7 hours a day, then make camp, tend to the horses, prepare food, and rest. The first few days were difficult for Victoria. Her body was not accustomed to spending so many hours on horseback, and she ached in places she had not known could ache. But Nathan was patient and kind, helping her down from her horse each evening, showing her stretches that would ease the muscle soreness, making sure she had plenty of water and food. At night, they would sit by the fire and talk. Nathan told her about his life, about growing up in Texas, about fighting in the war and the things he had seen that still haunted him. He told her about his years with the Rangers, tracking outlaws across hostile territory, the friends he had lost along the way. He told her about the day he decided he was done with violence, done with death, and wanted nothing more than to build something instead of destroying it. Victoria told him about her childhood in Nevada City, about her parents and her brother Thomas. She told him about the fever, about waking up to find everyone she loved dead and herself transformed. She told him about the fear and loneliness of the past 3 months, about the people she had healed and the people she had failed to save because they would not let her near them. "Do the marks ever stop glowing?" Nathan asked one night, examining her hands in the firelight. "They glow when I use my gift," Victoria said, "when I heal someone. The rest of the time they're just scars or whatever they are." "They're beautiful," Nathan said quietly. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They're the reason everyone fears me. Then everyone is a fool." Nathan traced one of the swirling patterns with his fingertip, his touch feather light. "They look like rivers or veins or tree branches, like they're a map of something important." "A map to what? I don't know. Life, maybe. The connections between all living things. The power that keeps hearts beating and lungs breathing." He looked up at her, and Victoria's breath caught at the intensity in his eyes. "Whatever force gave you these marks and this gift, I believe it was benevolent. I believe it chose you because you were strong enough to bear it." "I don't feel strong," Victoria whispered. "Strength isn't about never being afraid or never struggling. It's about keeping going even when you're terrified, even when the whole world seems set against you. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Victoria Ashford." Something shifted between them in that moment, something fundamental. Victoria realized that what she was feeling for Nathan Vance was not just gratitude or friendship. It was something deeper, something that made her heart race and her skin feel too warm despite the cool night air. They crossed into Oregon Territory 2 weeks into their journey. The landscape changed gradually, the dry hills of California giving way to greener valleys and denser forests. They passed other travelers heading west, families in covered wagons seeking their fortunes, prospectors hoping to strike it rich, drifters looking for work or trouble or both. Nathan taught Victoria how to hunt and how to read the signs of the trail. He showed her which plants were safe to eat and which would make her sick, how to find water even in areas that seemed barren, how to build a fire in the rain. Victoria absorbed it all like a sponge, grateful for the knowledge and for the feeling of being useful. One evening, about 3 weeks into the journey, they came across another camp not far from where they planned to stop for the night. A family, it looked like, with a broken wagon wheel and a crying baby that Victoria could hear from a quarter-mile away. "We should help them," Victoria said immediately. Nathan nodded. "I'll see if they need assistance with the wagon. You check on the baby." The family was young, probably not much older than Victoria herself. The husband, whose name was Thomas, had the look of a man at the end of his rope. His wife, Martha, was trying to soothe a screaming infant while also watching 2 other small children who were running around the disabled wagon. "Need some help?" Nathan called out as they approached. Thomas looked up, relief flooding his face. "God, yes. The wheel cracked about an hour ago and I've been trying to fix it, but I don't have the right tools. If you have a spare axle or could help me jury rig something, I'd be in your debt." "I've got tools," Nathan said. "Let me take a look." Victoria dismounted and walked over to Martha. "Is the baby all right? I could hear him crying from quite a distance." Martha's eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion and tears. "He's been crying for days. I think he's sick, but I don't know what's wrong. He won't eat, he just screams and screams. I don't know what to do." "May I look at him?" Victoria asked gently. Martha hesitated, her arms tightening protectively around the baby. "Are you a doctor?" "No, but I have some experience with healing. I might be able to help." Something in Victoria's tone must have convinced Martha, because she carefully passed the baby over. The moment Victoria's hands touched the infant's fevered skin, she knew what was wrong. Infection in his ear, spreading rapidly. If left untreated, it could kill him within days. Victoria looked over at Nathan, who was already deep in conversation with Thomas about the wagon wheel. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. If she healed the baby, Martha and Thomas would see her marks glow. They would know she was different, possibly dangerous. They might react with fear or anger or violence, but if she did not heal the baby, he would die. And Victoria could not live with that on her conscience. "I can help him," Victoria said, making her decision. "But I need to warn you about something first. I have an unusual gift, and when I use it, something strange happens. People who have seen it have been frightened. But I promise you, I mean no harm to you or your child. I only want to help." Martha looked at her warily. "What kind of gift?" "It's easier to show you than to explain. May I try to heal your son?" After a long moment, Martha nodded. "If you can help him, please. I can't lose him." Victoria sat down on a log and cradled the screaming baby in her arms. She placed one marked hand against his burning forehead and closed her eyes. The power rose immediately, eager to be used. She let it flow into the child, seeking out the infection, burning it away. She felt the fever break, felt the inflammation recede, felt the baby's pain dissolve like sugar in water. When she opened her eyes, the baby had stopped crying. He was looking up at her with wide, curious eyes, and a tiny smile played at the corners of his mouth. Martha gasped. She was staring at Victoria's hands, at the golden glow that was just beginning to fade. "What are you?" "I'm just a woman with an unusual ability," Victoria said, carefully handing the baby back to his mother. "He had an infection in his ear. It's gone now. He should be fine. But your hands." They were glowing, and Jacob, he stopped crying. He's never stopped crying that fast, not even when he was healthy. Martha looked from the baby to Victoria and back again. "How did you do that?" Before Victoria could answer, Thomas and Nathan walked over. Thomas saw the expression on his wife's face and immediately tensed. "What's wrong? What happened?" "She healed Jacob," Martha said, her voice shaking. Her hands glowed and she healed him. Thomas looked at Victoria and she braced herself for the fear and rejection that usually followed such a revelation. But instead, Thomas dropped to his knees in front of her. "Thank you," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Oh God, thank you. We thought we were going to lose him. Thank you." Victoria was so surprised she could not speak. Martha was crying now too, clutching her baby and thanking God and Victoria in the same breath. Nathan stood behind Victoria, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder in a gesture of support and solidarity. They stayed with Thomas and Martha's family for 2 days, helping them repair the wagon wheel and making sure baby Jacob was truly on the mend. The couple never once expressed fear of Victoria or her marks. Instead, they treated her with a respect and gratitude that she had not experienced since before the fever. On the morning they were ready to part ways, Martha pressed a small bundle into Victoria's hands. "It's not much," she said. "Just some preserves and a quilt I've been working on. But I wanted you to have something to remember us by. You saved my son's life. I'll never forget that." Victoria hugged the other woman tightly, blinking back tears. "Take care of your family," she said. "And tell Jacob, when he's old enough to understand, that he should never be afraid of people who are different. Sometimes the people who seem strange are the ones with the kindest hearts." As they rode away from the camp, Nathan looked over at Victoria with a smile. "You see, not everyone is afraid, not everyone runs away. Thomas and Martha are good people," Victoria said, "but they're rare. Most people don't react that way. Maybe you've just been unlucky in the people you've encountered so far. The world is full of good people, Victoria. You just have to give them a chance to prove it." Victoria wanted to believe him. And as the days passed and they continued north, she found herself starting to hope that maybe Nathan was right. They crossed into Idaho territory in early summer. The days were long and warm, the nights cool and clear. They followed the Snake River for a while, then cut northeast toward Montana. The landscape grew more rugged, mountains rising in the distance, vast stretches of grassland rolling out like an ocean frozen in place. Nathan taught Victoria how to fish in the cold mountain streams, how to track deer through the forest, how to read the weather by watching the clouds and feeling the wind. Victoria, in turn, showed Nathan small ways she could use her gift beyond healing. She could sense illness in the horses before it became serious, could find clean water by feeling for the life that gathered around it, could tell when wild animals were nearby by the disturbances in the natural flow of life around them. "You're more attuned to the world than anyone I've ever met," Nathan said one evening as they made camp in a small valley. "It's like you can feel the heartbeat of the earth itself." "Sometimes it's overwhelming," Victoria admitted. "When we pass through towns or areas with a lot of people, I can feel all of their pain and sickness at once. It's like being surrounded by noise that only I can hear." "Is that why you agreed to come to Montana? Because the ranch is isolated, fewer people around to overwhelm you?" "Partly. But also because I trust you, Nathan. I feel safe with you in a way I haven't felt safe since my family died." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, and Victoria saw something in his eyes that made her pulse quicken. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "I'm glad you trust me," he said softly. "Because I trust you too, Victoria, more than I've trusted anyone in a very long time." They were sitting very close to each other now, close enough that Victoria could feel the warmth radiating from Nathan's body. She could smell the wood smoke and leather scent that clung to his clothes, could see the silver threading through his dark hair, could count each individual eyelash framing those remarkable blue-green eyes. "Nathan," she whispered, not sure what she was asking for but knowing she needed something. He leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and questioning, a kiss that asked permission rather than demanding it. Victoria's eyes fluttered closed and she kissed him back, her marked hands coming up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat under her palms, strong and steady, and the taste of him was like coming home after a long journey. When they finally pulled apart, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the day I met you," he admitted. "Why didn't you?" "Because I wanted to make sure you were ready. I wanted you to know that you have a choice, always. If you don't want this, if you just want to be partners in building the ranch, that's all right. I'll never push you into something you're not comfortable with." Victoria's heart swelled with affection for this careful, considerate man. "I want this," she said firmly. "I want you. I think I have since you rolled up your sleeve and asked me to heal you." Nathan smiled, and it transformed his entire face, erasing years of weariness and hardship. "Then I'm the luckiest man alive." They kissed again, longer this time, deeper. Victoria felt like she was falling and flying all at once, her body singing with a joy she had not thought possible. When Nathan's hands tangled in her hair and pulled her closer, she went willingly, pressing herself against him and losing herself in the sensation. They did not make love that night, though Victoria could tell Nathan wanted to. Instead, they held each other by the fire, trading kisses and soft words, learning the shape and feel of each other. Nathan told her about the ranch in more detail, about the plans he had for their future. Victoria told him about her dreams, the ones she had been too afraid to hope for, of a home and a family and a life free from fear. "We'll have all of that," Nathan promised, his arms tight around her. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you're happy and safe." "I'll spend mine making sure you're loved," Victoria said, and she felt Nathan's breath catch at the word. "Love," he repeated softly. "Is that what this is?" Victoria thought about it, about the way her heart seemed to expand whenever Nathan smiled at her, about the way she felt complete in his presence, about the way she trusted him with her life and her heart and her future. "Yes," she said. "I think it is. I love you, Nathan Vance." "I love you too, Victoria Ashford," Nathan said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." They held each other under the stars, and Victoria sent up a silent prayer of thanks to whatever force had brought them together. She had been so lost, so alone, and now she had found someone who saw her not as a monster or a witch, but as a woman worthy of love and respect. They crossed into Montana territory in late June. The land here was even more beautiful than Nathan had described, vast and wild and breathtakingly open. They followed the Missouri River east, passing through small settlements and trading posts, stopping occasionally to resupply or to camp in particularly scenic spots. One night, about a week into Montana, Nathan woke Victoria with a gentle shake of her shoulder. "Come on," he whispered. "There's something I want you to see." Groggily, Victoria followed him away from the camp and up a small rise. When they reached the top, she gasped. The northern lights were dancing across the sky, ribbons of green and blue and purple light weaving and swirling like silk scarves caught in an invisible wind. Victoria had heard stories about the aurora borealis, but had never seen it with her own eyes. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It reminds me of your marks," Nathan said, taking her hand. The way the colors move and shift, the way it seems almost alive. They watched the lights for over an hour, standing close together on the hilltop. Victoria rested her head on Nathan's shoulder and let herself be happy, purely and completely happy, perhaps for the first time since her family died. The ranch was everything Nathan had promised and more. The house was solid and well built, with large windows that let in the morning sun and a stone fireplace that would keep them warm through the harsh Montana winters. The land stretched out in all directions, grassland and forest, and the river cutting through it like a silver ribbon. "Welcome home," Nathan said as he helped Victoria down from the wagon. Home. The word resonated through Victoria's entire being. This was home now. Not the cabin in California where she had been born, not any of the towns she had passed through in the past 3 months. This ranch, this land, this life with Nathan. This was where she belonged. They spent the first few days settling in, unpacking supplies, airing out the house, and taking inventory of what needed to be done. The list was long. Fences needed mending, the barn roof needed patching, the chicken coop needed rebuilding, the vegetable garden was overgrown with weeds. But Victoria did not mind the work. It felt good to have purpose again, to be building something instead of just surviving. Nathan taught her how to care for the cattle and horses, how to milk the cow, how to collect eggs without startling the chickens. Victoria learned quickly, her natural intuition and her gift helping her understand the animals better than most people could. She could sense when a horse was feeling off before it showed outward signs of illness, could tell which chickens were about to start laying and which were past their productive years. In the evenings, after the work was done and they had eaten dinner, Nathan and Victoria would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains. They would talk about their plans for the ranch, about the future they were building together. One evening, about a month after they arrived, Nathan took Victoria's hand and looked at her with an expression that was both nervous and hopeful. "Victoria, I know we haven't been here long, and I know we agreed to take things slow and see how we felt. But I need you to know that my feelings haven't changed. If anything, they've only grown stronger. I love you. I love waking up next to you every morning and falling asleep with you in my arms every night. I love working beside you during the day and talking with you by the fire in the evening. I love everything about you, including the parts that scare other people." Victoria's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear over it. "Nathan, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I want this to be permanent. I want you to be my wife, Victoria. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building this ranch, raising a family, growing old together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "I know it's not much, but it was my mother's. She would have wanted you to have it. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Victoria's face, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course I'll marry you." Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with a passion that left them both breathless. They were married a week later by a traveling preacher who passed through the area. It was a simple ceremony, just the two of them and the preacher standing by the river at sunset. Victoria wore her best dress, which Nathan had carefully cleaned and mended. Nathan wore a new shirt he had purchased in town, his hair freshly cut and his face clean shaven. When the preacher asked if Nathan would take Victoria to be his wife, in sickness and in health, for better or worse, until death parted them, Nathan's voice was strong and sure. "I do." When he asked Victoria the same question, she looked into Nathan's eyes and saw her entire future reflected there. "I do," she said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Then, by the power vested in me by God and the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Nathan did not need to be told twice. He pulled Victoria into his arms and kissed her with all the love and passion and promise of their future together. Victoria kissed him back, her marked hands coming up to cradle his face, and she felt something shift inside her. The marks on her hands, which had been dim since they arrived at the ranch, suddenly flared with golden light. Nathan pulled back slightly, looking down at her hands in wonder. "What's happening?" "I don't know," Victoria said, but even as she spoke, she understood. The marks were responding to the strength of her emotion, to the pure joy and love she felt in this moment. They were a part of her, and they reflected what was in her heart. The light faded slowly, and when it was gone, Victoria noticed something new. The marks were still there, still swirling across her skin, but they seemed softer somehow. Less like scars and more like delicate tattoos, beautiful instead of frightening. "They're changing," Nathan said, tracing one of the patterns with his finger. "They're becoming part of you instead of something separate." "Maybe that's what they were always meant to be," Victoria said. "Not a curse or a mark of the devil, but just a part of who I am, something that makes me different but not wrong." "Never wrong," Nathan agreed. He kissed her again, softer this time. "You're perfect exactly as you are." That night, in the bed they now shared as husband and wife, Nathan and Victoria consummated their marriage. It was tender and passionate, awkward in some moments and transcendent in others. Victoria had never been with a man before, and Nathan was patient and careful, making sure she was comfortable every step of the way. When it was over, they lay tangled together in the sheets, Victoria's head resting on Nathan's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Nathan said, his arms tightening around her. "More than I have words to express." The months that followed were the happiest of Victoria's life. She and Nathan fell into an easy rhythm, working together during the day and spending their evenings planning for the future. They expanded the vegetable garden, repaired all the fences, added on to the barn to accommodate more livestock. Nathan taught Victoria how to break horses, how to repair leather tack, how to preserve meat for the winter. Victoria used her gift to keep the animals healthy and to help Nathan when he inevitably sustained small injuries from the demanding ranch work. Word spread slowly through the surrounding area about Victoria's abilities. At first, people were wary, just as they had been in California. But Nathan was well known and respected in the region, and his unwavering support of his wife went a long way toward easing people's fears. The first person to ask for Victoria's help was a rancher named Samuel Morrison, whose young daughter had been thrown from a horse and broken her leg. The local doctor had set the bone, but it was healing crooked, and the girl was in constant pain. Samuel came to the ranch with his hat in his hands and desperation in his eyes. "I know people say your wife is strange," he told Nathan, "but I also heard she can heal. If there's any chance she could help my Sarah, I'm willing to pay whatever you ask." Nathan had looked at Victoria, letting her make the decision. She had nodded without hesitation. "Bring her here. I'll do what I can." When Samuel returned with Sarah, Victoria examined the girl's leg carefully. The doctor had done his best, but the bone had been set slightly wrong, and it was already beginning to fuse in a position that would leave Sarah with a permanent limp and chronic pain. "I'll need to re-break the bone so I can set it properly," Victoria told Samuel. "It's going to hurt her, but only for a moment. Then I'll heal it correctly so it fuses straight." Samuel looked sick at the thought of his daughter being hurt again, but he trusted Victoria enough to give his permission. Victoria worked quickly, using her gift to numb Sarah's pain as much as possible while she carefully broke and reset the bone. Then she poured all her power into healing it, ensuring that it would grow back straight and strong. When she was done, Sarah stood up and took a few experimental steps. Her eyes widened in wonder. "It doesn't hurt anymore. Papa, it doesn't hurt." Samuel had tears streaming down his face as he hugged his daughter. He tried to pay Victoria, but she refused to take his money. "Just tell people that I'm here if they need help," she said, "and that they don't need to be afraid of me." After that, people started coming to the ranch more regularly. A woman whose husband had been gored by a bull, a child with a fever that wouldn't break, an elderly man with arthritis so severe he could barely walk. Victoria helped them all, never asking for payment but accepting gratefully when people offered food or supplies or their labor in return. Nathan watched his wife with pride and admiration as she healed person after person, her marks glowing golden in the lamplight, her face serene with concentration. This was who she was meant to be, he realized. Not someone hiding her gift in fear, but someone using it openly to help others. As winter approached, Victoria realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but when she missed her second monthly cycle and woke up feeling nauseated every morning, she knew for certain. The realization filled her with a complex mixture of joy and terror. She wanted a child desperately, wanted to build a family with Nathan, but the thought of bringing a baby into the world when she had already lost so much was frightening. She told Nathan one evening as they sat by the fire. He had been reading a book about irrigation systems, and she had been attempting to knit a blanket, though she was not very good at it yet. "Nathan, I have something to tell you." He looked up immediately, hearing the seriousness in her tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I'm fine." "Better than fine, actually." She took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby." For a moment, Nathan just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then a smile broke across his face like sunrise, brilliant and warm and full of pure joy. He dropped his book and crossed to her in 3 quick strides, pulling her into his arms. "A baby," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're going to have a baby. Victoria, that's wonderful. That's the best news I've ever heard." "You're not worried?" Victoria asked. "About what the baby might inherit from me? About whether they'll have marks like mine?" Nathan pulled back so he could look her in the eyes. "If our child has marks like yours, then they'll be beautiful. If they have your gift, then they'll be blessed. And if they're completely ordinary, then they'll be just as loved and just as wanted. I don't care what they look like or what abilities they have or don't have. I just care that they're ours and that they're healthy." Victoria burst into tears, overwhelmed by relief and love and the hormones that were already making her more emotional than usual. Nathan held her while she cried, rocking her gently and murmuring words of comfort and reassurance. The pregnancy was difficult at times. Victoria's gift made her hyper-aware of every change in her body, every shift and adjustment as the baby grew. She could feel the tiny heartbeat, could sense the baby's emotions in a vague, unfocused way. It was overwhelming and wonderful all at once. Nathan was attentive and protective, taking on more of the physical work around the ranch so Victoria could rest. He brought her tea when she was nauseous, rubbed her feet when they swelled, stayed up with her on the nights when the baby was particularly active, and kept her from sleeping. As Victoria's belly grew, so did the respect and acceptance from the surrounding community. People saw how devoted Nathan was to his pregnant wife, saw how Victoria continued to help anyone who asked, despite her own discomfort, and they began to realize that there was nothing to fear from the woman with the marked hands. Victoria gave birth on a cold March morning, with Nathan by her side and a midwife named Ellen attending. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Victoria was certain she could not go on. But Nathan held her hand through all of it. whispering encouragement and love, and Ellen was competent and calm. When the baby finally emerged, squalling and red-faced and absolutely perfect, Victoria burst into tears of joy and relief. "It's a boy," Ellen announced, placing the baby on Victoria's chest. "A healthy, strong boy." Nathan was crying too as he looked down at his son. "He's beautiful," he said in wonder. "He looks just like you." Victoria examined her son carefully, checking him with both her eyes and her gift. He was indeed healthy, with no sign of illness or injury. And when she looked at his tiny hands, she saw that they were unmarked, just normal baby skin, soft and perfect. "He doesn't have the marks," she said, and she was surprised by the relief she felt. She had told Nathan the truth when she said she would love their child no matter what, but a part of her was grateful that he would not have to carry the burden that she did. "He's perfect," Nathan said. He reached out and gently touched the baby's tiny hand, and their son immediately grasped his father's finger with surprising strength. "Look at that. He's strong." They named him Thomas, after Victoria's brother who had died in the fever. It felt right to honor the family she had lost while celebrating the new family she was building. Thomas was a happy baby, rarely fussing except when he was hungry or tired. He had Nathan's dark hair and Victoria's green eyes, and he grew quickly, reaching for toys and smiling at everyone who spoke to him. Victoria used her gift to make sure he stayed healthy, monitoring him constantly for any sign of illness or injury. As Thomas grew, the ranch prospered. Word had spread throughout the region about Victoria's healing abilities, and people came from miles away to ask for her help. Some offered money, which Victoria and Nathan accepted when they needed it, and turned away when the people asking for help clearly could not afford to pay. Others offered goods or services, and the ranch benefited from the goodwill Victoria had built up. Nathan expanded the herd and built additional structures on the property. They hired a few ranch hands to help with the work, men who were not afraid of Victoria and who respected both her and Nathan. The ranch became a hub of activity, a place where people knew they could find help and acceptance regardless of their circumstances. When Thomas was 2 years old, Victoria became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Nathan was just as attentive as he had been the first time, and Thomas was fascinated by his mother's growing belly, patting it gently and talking to the baby, even though he could not yet form complete sentences. Their daughter was born on a warm summer evening, with Thomas sleeping in the next room and Nathan once again by Victoria's side. The labor was faster this time, and when Ellen placed the baby girl in Victoria's arms, Victoria's first thought was that she had never seen anything more perfect. "She has your marks," Nathan said softly, looking down at his daughter's tiny hands. Victoria's breath caught. Sure enough, there were faint patterns on the baby's skin, barely visible but unmistakably there. The same swirling designs that covered Victoria's hands, rendered in miniature on her daughter's palms. "She has the gift," Victoria whispered. "She'll be like me." Nathan kissed Victoria's forehead. "Then we'll teach her how to use it. We'll make sure she never feels afraid or alone the way you did. She'll grow up knowing that her gift is a blessing, and she'll have both of us to guide her." They named her Grace, because that was what she represented to Victoria. A second chance, a continuation of the gift that had caused her so much pain, but had also led her to Nathan and to this life. As Grace grew, it became clear that she had indeed inherited Victoria's abilities. By the time she was 5 years old, she could sense illness in the animals and could perform small healings with Victoria's guidance. But unlike Victoria, Grace never had to face fear or rejection because of her gift. She grew up surrounded by love and acceptance, with parents who taught her that her abilities were special and valuable. Thomas, though he did not have the gift himself, was fiercely protective of his little sister. He would tell anyone who would listen that Grace was going to be a great healer someday, just like their mother. The years passed peacefully. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Victoria and Nathan added 2 more children to their family, another boy and another girl, neither of whom had the marks or the gift. But they were loved just as much as Thomas and Grace, raised in a home full of warmth and laughter and acceptance. Victoria taught Grace everything she knew about healing, about using the gift responsibly and ethically, about the cost of using such power and the importance of taking care of herself. Grace learned quickly, her abilities growing stronger as she matured. By the time she was 15, she was performing healings nearly as complex as Victoria's, and people throughout the territory knew that the Vance Ranch was home to not 1 but 2 gifted healers. Nathan, now in his 50s with more gray than dark in his hair, spent his days working the ranch and his evenings sitting on the porch with Victoria, watching their children and grandchildren play in the yard. Thomas had married a local girl and built a house on the far side of the property, and his wife had just given birth to their 2nd child. Grace was courting a young man from a neighboring ranch, someone who respected her gift and was not intimidated by it. Did you ever imagine this? Victoria asked Nathan one evening as they sat watching the sunset. When you walked into that saloon in Nevada City all those years ago, did you think we would end up here? Nathan smiled and took her hand, the one with the marks that had faded over the years but never disappeared entirely. I knew you were special the moment I saw you. I knew that if I could convince you to trust me, we could build something extraordinary together. But no, I don't think I could have imagined this. It's better than anything I could have dreamed. I was so afraid back then, Victoria said quietly. So convinced that I would spend the rest of my life alone, that no one would ever accept me for who I was. And now you're surrounded by people who love you. You're the most respected woman in the territory. You've healed hundreds of people and trained your daughter to do the same. You've built a family and a legacy that will last for generations. Nathan brought her marked hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You're remarkable, Victoria Vance. You always have been. Victoria leaned her head on Nathan's shoulder, feeling perfectly content. The marks on her hands tingled slightly, the way they always did when she felt strong emotion, but it was a pleasant sensation now. A reminder of who she was and what she had overcome. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For rolling up your sleeve that day. For asking me to heal you when no one else would let me touch them. For seeing past the marks and the fear to who I really was. For loving me. Nathan wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close. Thank you for saving my life, and for giving me a reason to live it fully. They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the Montana sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple and gold. In the distance, they could hear their children calling to each other, could hear Thomas's baby crying and being soothed, could hear Grace laughing at something her young man had said. This was their legacy. Not just the ranch or the land or the healing gift that ran through their bloodline. But this family, this love, this acceptance and joy that they had fought so hard to create and protect. Victoria had been given a remarkable gift, one that had caused her pain and suffering in the beginning. But it had also led her to Nathan, and together they had built something beautiful. As the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky, Victoria closed her eyes and sent up a prayer of gratitude. She had survived the fever that killed her family. She had endured the fear and rejection of those who did not understand her. She had found the courage to trust Nathan and to build a new life in this wild, beautiful place. And now, surrounded by love and acceptance, and the family she had created, Victoria Ashford Vance knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The marks on her hands were not a curse or a burden anymore. They were simply a part of her story, the physical manifestation of the gift that had brought her to this moment, to this place, to this perfect life. Nathan squeezed her hand gently, and Victoria squeezed back, a silent communication that needed no words. They had made it through the hard times together, had built something lasting and true, and they would face whatever the future held side by side as they always had. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of sage and pine and the river that ran through their land. In the house behind them, Victoria could sense the warm glow of life, the heartbeats of her children and grandchildren, the love that filled every room and corner. This was home. This was family. This was everything she had ever wanted and more than she had ever dared to hope for, and it had all started with a cowboy who rolled up his sleeve and said, "Heal me." Victoria smiled and settled more comfortably against Nathan's side, perfectly content to sit here forever, watching the stars come out over their Montana ranch, surrounded by the family and the life they had built together. The marks on her hands glowed softly in the darkness, not with power or magic, but with the simple, radiant warmth of a woman who had found her place in the world and knew, without a shadow of doubt, that she was loved. The end.